Good morning. I'm just getting myself, here I am. Right, amazingly, I've got this technology sorted, so I hope people can hear and see me. And I have a comments bar at the side, and I'm really looking forward to more of a conversation than a monologue. So my name is Lynn Franks. I have been invited by the organisers of Into the Wild to do a talk this morning. Sitting talking to your computer for an hour on a Sunday morning is kind of a bit of a challenge, so it's kind of really going to be good if we could have definitely a bit of interaction. My subject of the day is co-creating the new narrative, how we create the new future. And what a day to start talking about this. Big changes. We're back in the UK in lockdown, national lockdown, although it's not quite the same as it was. And then, of course, the whole American election situation. I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of excitement and thrills that Joe Biden has won and Kamala Harris. But the reality is, let's wait and see. Is it the lesser of two evils? How is it going to affect us? Is it a broken system that needs to go, which is what it is in my opinion. There is so much more that we can do as human society that is not relevant to who votes for what. Although, I mean, it's better than what it was, I'm sure. So a few months ago, I'd like to start off by putting things in context. So a few months ago, I did a talk about how in this current global atmosphere with the looming financial breakdown, the worst the world's ever seen, how can we use this period of pause and change to go from a capitalist system based on power and greed, draining the planet of its natural resources and destroying the climate, to a new system based on collaboration, cooperation and love? We have the choice now. And I was really quite full on when I wrote this a few months ago. But anyway, we, the global nation, now have the choice to either continue in this destructive, inhuman behaviour, manifesting the kind of worst of a possible future run by AI and us all being slaves to the system, or we start taking steps as co-creators of a new, loving society with sustainable sufficiency for the generations to come. So it's time to start imagining, and of course many of us have been imagining how that can look. This time for the new system. We've been doing it for a long time. I feel I've been training my whole life, and I feel that this is now the time. I've written the words here, the dawn of a new reality. That sounds like a song from Aquarius, doesn't it? Da, 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 Aquarius. It is the dawn of a new reality, and it's solutions to the current crisis, and looking where we went wrong in the last few thousand years of patriarchy, and where the next few thousand can take us, women and men together. So that's my intro. We can do it. I realise more and more that there are so many of us out there in the world who are, I hate to say it, woke, but are aware, who are conscious, whose vibration is rising. I feel I can talk in the context of Into the Wild in a far freer way, perhaps, than I would be talking and the language I would be using some of the other communities I talk to. But I mean, that's what it's all about for me at this point in my life, is to get the word out in the language that is heard by the many, many different people that I speak to. I'm just going to check because I want to make sure I'm online. Yes, I am. I hope I am. If anybody can't hear me, let me know. And if anybody can hear me, it would be very useful just to do a thumbs up or something, because I really, really find that the way Hugh puts this on is quite a challenge. So I'm just hoping that some of you can hear me and some of you have shown up. And there we go. I'm going anyway. I'm going to be talking for an hour regardless. So I hope there's some people out there. So my story, for those of you who don't know me, is that my background was PR and journalism from the age of 21. And I was in the fashion industry, and I was very much involved with the business world and how to influence and get stories out there. And that was okay. I mean, I did good things. Oh, good. I'm good on sound. Thank you very much, Lina Maria Lefebvre. Thank you. So my background was very much kind of part of that paradigm. It was 70s and 80s, and I started a PR company. And because I was always very creative and loved what I was doing and had passion, I created London Fashion Week and and did a lot of initiatives that were the first of. And during that period, I kind of burnt out, and I started seeing that there had to be more to life. I had 2 young children, and I was running this business that was growing all the time. So I am fortunate to say that I found my spiritual path, my spiritual practice, and started practicing Buddhism on a daily basis. And that kept me sane, sort of the second part of the 20 years I was running this business. And it also opened me up to the whole concept of cause and effect, of karma, that I'm responsible for my actions, that I can make a difference, and that I can change my patterns by my chanting to a new awareness. So through that, I started getting involved in a lot of causes, environmental, human rights. I created the biggest awareness campaign for AIDS, HIV/AIDS in the 80s, and I was involved in Live Aid. I put on Fashion Aid and all sorts of things. And that's where I felt my joy, that we can do things collectively that can really make a difference, using my skills of communication and my creativity. From there, I sold my business and I got involved in the whole area of women's empowerment. And I wrote a book called the Seed Handbook, which is behind me here somewhere, which has come out in lots of countries now, even in Russian last year, which is good. And it's all about creating a feminine way of doing business. And it was written for women, it is written for women. SEED is an acronym for Sustainable Enterprise and Empowerment Dynamics, and that has become a body of content which talks about and supports and nurtures women in community to move into their leadership roles. So I do see that we have to go forward with men and women together. I really feel very passionate about that too. But we women have to step up. And the reality is that we often don't, certainly women of a certain age, because of our own lack of self-belief and confidence. And we need to have a collective platform where we can not feel that we're on our own and we can do it together. Particularly women, the wise women, of society who have lived extraordinary lives and are now at that point where they almost feel they're on the heat, but actually they're just starting. And I know that, and that's what I do with Seed. Seed is a platform and a community and a tribe of wise women of all ages who are the wisdom keepers and who are the healers and the sages and the poets and the dancers and the lovers and the grandmothers and the mothers. And that is absolutely not because I want to hold back working with men, far from it. I know that's where I'm going, and I'm going to read you something in a minute that shows you where I'm going. But right now, we women have got to step up into our leadership roles. And I've quoted this a lot, just about every time I've spoken in the last few months, and I'd like to quote it again. It's a quote from Buckminster Fuller, who was a great visionary architect, philosopher of mostly the 30s, 40s, 50s. Great guy. And he said a lot of wonderful things. So if you don't know and are not familiar with Buckminster Fuller's work, do look into it. But he said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. So I'll say that again. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. You change something by building a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And I believe that's exactly where we are right now in society. We are at a point where taking the opportunity of this pause and this space that we have by this pandemic, which I'm not going to go on about in terms of conspiracy, is it, isn't it? I do feel resentful that I've been locked up again, but there you go. That's what it is. We just have to work within the system, I guess, to a degree. But what we're doing and what I'm doing is saying, okay, I've been given this pause. Let's create a new system which is better and which people will naturally gravitate to. And that system covers a lot of areas. It's a circular system. It's a circular leadership. And it's very much about community. It's about localization. It's about circular economy. It's about a new way of growing our vegetables, everything, growing ourselves. Actually, I did this, I don't know if I can show it very clearly, but I don't think I can. But anyway, I don't know if you can see it. Everything I do is always using petals and growing things. So I did this the other day because everything I do is about seven petals and all the rest of it. So I put in these petals the various things that I think are so relevant for all of us, everybody. Home, which is about where we live, how we live, the sustainable way we live. looking at how we can, but it won't be necessarily my generation, but how we can go off grid, how we can go back into the woods. The economy, I mentioned circular economy, I'm going to go into that in more detail. Energy, renewable energy, off-grid, again, how we can do things, growing, agriculture, new way of planting, growing our vegetables, teaching the children how to be at one with the next one petal, which is nature. And nature, of course, is about regeneration and aligning ourselves with the environment, being at one with nature in every single decision we make. And that all connects back with circular economy, the donut economy, and I'll go on a little bit more about that, and education for the children, education for the adults. I'm a great believer and follower of Steiner. I think the way that children are starting to go to forest schools, being outside more, following, if you like, the old and ancient ways, indigenous ways of education is crucial. This is really weird because I can't sort of do it properly. And then at the top here, spirituality, well-being, the spirit, culture, creativity, how we can live a life based on joy, how we can remember to do our dance, to sing our song, to do the storytelling, all the things you've been seeing on Into the Wild over this weekend with some of my favourite people who are teaching us how to use our breath, like Candida Valentino this morning, and Michael teaching us how to use our chants. And I've seen so many old friends here over the last day or so, and the new music, and to celebrate. And that's why I love what Hugh does. That's why I'm happy to support him even on a rainy Sunday morning, because it is how we keep that joy in our lives. And that's through everything you're going to see and hear over this weekend. And also the stories from the speakers, people like Matt McCartney, who's an amazing person, and I love hearing him speak. I know he's speaking sometime today. So I just want to go back in a little bit more detail to some of the things that I've talked about. So the whole idea of local, global, community, one nation, we are one race. I made a list actually, I don't know what I've done, I've got so many bits of paper here, because I didn't want to leave anything out. Now these are not my words. I listen to Humanity Rising as regularly as I can, which is free on the internet. Any of you want to, okay, I'm looking at now to see all your comments. And Humanity Rising, run by Jim Garrison, Ubiquity University out of Holland. I so recommend. He has the most amazing global speakers. I have learned so much. I feel like I've been back at university listening to him over the last 6 months, not him, but his guests and him. Amazing stuff. So I can't even remember who said this, but I just want to read it out. We as individuals can be stewards of the whole, valuing places and cultures of the whole. We all can do it together. We can optimize collective value and enable local initiatives. That really is that think local, act global. Respect collaborative governance. Now this guy that said this used the word polycentricity, which is a new one for me, but it's cosmopolitan, localized impact. And that is obviously local, global, how we learn from each other, tell each other how we're doing it and share. Learning from nature, of course, with regenerative, this is a challenge, regenerativity and reciprocity, not my two easiest words, that's what we have to do. And all my relations, as the Indigenous First Nation always say in North America, and many other Indigenous people too, also, all my relations, we are all one. Relations with others and nature, and connect. And finally, equitable and accessible money, markets and trade, so that it is not just for the some and the few, that we are all able to do that. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on that with my next piece of paper. And I'm just making sure that no one is contacting me from this organisation to say that anything's going wrong. So that's why I'm looking at my phone every now and then. Okay, apologies. I'm sure they're not, because I think the last thing Hugh's doing is actually checking that anybody's actually got online. Sorry, Hugh. But anyway, I am here, so that's great. So, as I said earlier, I do feel like certainly the last 20, 25 years has been about me researching the future. I've always lived in the future. I've never really known what I was doing. There was no plan. There was no okay, now I've sold my business, I'm doing other things, let me work out what's happening in the future. I've just always known. I've got very deep intuitive knowledge of what's going to happen next. That's why I was good in the commercial world. I'm good in the commercial world because I know the trends that are happening next. But on a life flow basis, I also feel what's happening, know what's happening, can see it coming. And quite often I've been a bit too early. But I'm not too early now. The time's here, isn't it? The time is here. There's no question about it. So I felt really tearful when I said that. So it's all about standing up and being seen. I have lost a lot of my wise women friends on the way, people who were leaders in an amazing sense of the world. You know, Gabrielle Roth, Anita Roddick, Sue Lloyd-Roberts, wonderful BBC journalist and human activist. There were so many women that were my contemporaries who are no longer here, and men too. But there's still a lot of us that are here. There are a lot of us that are here, and we can do this, and we can do this together. So I've written here, my notes here were one global nation, caring for all. But the most important thing of all, and I speak as a grandmother of 7 on this one, is what will work for the children. And I know Mac McCartney, that's what he talks about when he does his talk, is thank you, Tamsin, the time is now. Yes, the time is now. I wrote an autobiography in 97, actually, when I was asked to do it. And I'd just come out of the PR business and people were interested in what I was doing. So I wrote a book called Absolutely Now. But in fact, and the subtitle was A Futurist Guide to Her Inner Truth. But actually, I wrote about a few pages about this sort of silly life that I'd led, fashion and all that nonsense. Well, no, it gives joy to people's lives. I shouldn't decry it. I love fashion. But really, it was about looking forward then. And there were so many things that I could see coming. And I'm still aware how, in a way, ahead of its time, that book was. I don't say that with any sense of, ego. I mean, it just comes through and I just know it's the truth. And now is the time. Now is the time. We have to step up, all of us, men, women, young people, old people, to get middle generation all together. Say, yes, we can do it. We can make this change. There are millions of us out there in every country of the world who are aware that there is a new way of connection, a new way of collaborating, and there are many who are doing it the ancient ways. I worked in Africa a little bit. I went a couple of times and worked with rural women there, and the way they had some horrible situations there where they still were carrying the water for miles and miles and miles. There was a huge amount of sexual abuse and some really dreadful things happening to women, but they were all there supporting each other. And one of the things they did, which I've never forgot, was that they would plant their seeds and grow their vegetables, and they would make sure their grandchildren were always fed. And whatever surplus they would take to the market, and they would sell. And whatever they would make in the market, they would then share out to the new generation, the younger women that were coming through, so they could buy their seeds. And I've never forgotten that. And it seemed to me that why are we all not doing that? Why are we not doing that? And in 95, I put on an event called What Women Want in the UK, which was the first big women's gathering at the South Bank. I took over the whole South Bank, absolute chutzpah really. And I had every aspect of a woman's life discussed in one way or another, whether it was women as consumers, women as natural health, women in sexuality. We had an incredible concert during that at the Festival Hall from Sinead O'Connor and Chrissy Hind and Sarah Jane Morris and others, and Jermaine Greer there. And we were really looking then, which is 95, what's that, 25 years ago, at what were the things that women wanted. And from there I went to Beijing to the UN Women's Conference, and I met women for the first time really it was the first time it had happened anyway, from so many countries, and learnt from them, listened to them, learnt from them. And it really was from the indigenous women, from the African women that had come all the way over to China from Africa, paying their way by cooking food as they went and selling it on the streets. I mean, the things I learned from them, and subsequently, since I've been traveling in different countries and worked in different countries, I realize, frankly, there is so much knowledge and wisdom in people that we think are perhaps poor or suffering. And in many ways, they do suffer, but in other ways, they're very rich. And it's about us exchanging our knowledge, our wisdom, with those who have got true wisdom from the earth. And of course, in South America, wherever there are still, thank heavens, indigenous people left who can share their knowledge, I'm listening. And you may have all heard, and I speak about it again quite often, about the 13 grandmothers who are 13 indigenous grandmothers. I'm not even sure they're still all alive. They literally dreamt each other in from all over the world and came together regularly to share their dreams, because it is about our dreams, and I guess that's what I'm talking about today, is how do we take our dreams of what the world can be, how we can create this new future for the children, and how we can make that our reality together. Together. That's how we have to do it, collaboratively, and share our stories. And I was thinking this morning, of course, inevitably, about politics. And, you know, if these old politics don't work, what could be the new politics? And I am not the person to think about that. I understand grassroots. I understand leadership at grassroots. I understand collectivity, localization, and how we can do it together on that basis. How we can do the other thing, I guess that goes back to some of those points that I was saying earlier, which I don't know what I did with that piece of paper, but it's how we can, I don't know what I've done with it, but it was the things that oh yes, here it is, the things that I mentioned earlier, which is politicians have to understand they are stewards. That's what they're doing there. They're not there to tell us what to do, treat us like we're half-wits. They are there to be stewards for the whole. Oh, I feel tearful again. This is quite emotional for me this morning because inevitably this week's been pretty full on for all of us, whatever our belief systems, politics, anything. And so it's like, whoa, have I heard anyone speak the truth this week? Have I in any way, has my body resonated with all this nonsense, whether it's, and I do watch the news, I do have to admit, because I think it's important to know what's going on. I do look at social media and I do read the papers, and I haven't read anything for a very, very long time, if ever, which has said to me, this is truth, this is the truth, because it's not, none of it. So every time I get this in my body, it's been happening more and more in the last year or so. Every time I say the truth or hear the truth, my body resonates and I kind of go up my back and my eyes start welling up. And so it is about, we are all stewards. We have to optimize the collective value of all of us. That's what we have to do, whether it's in our villages, our towns, our cities, wherever it is, whether it's the into the wild community, wherever we live. It's about, we have to optimize our collective value. It's not about one person having the answer or a political party having the answer or whatever it is. We have to optimize all of us. And we have to have respectful collaborative governance. That's so, I mean, again, these were not my words, but they really affected me hugely. Respectful collaborative governance. And that's what's so necessary. And that is not apparent, whatever nonsense parties and rubbish is going on. Learn from nature, regenerativity and reciprocity, all my relations, equitable and accessible, money, markets and trade. So I'm going to, let me see, I'm doing fine on time. I'm going to go through a little bit more detail on some of the things and some things that I would like to recommend that you look at. I've already mentioned Humanity Rising. I cannot say more about the quality of just about all of the speakers they have on there. But there are people that I am really influenced by, and I'd like to share that. It probably goes back to my roots as a PR person. You may know these people, but if you don't, please take a look, read their books, just Google them. They're all online, they're all speaking the truth, and they've all got a lot to teach us, actually. And some of them aren't even with us anymore. I mean, I talked about Buckminster Fuller, but I'm also a great believer in Nikolai Tesla and his work, and I'll mention that a bit, and Steiner I mentioned earlier. And there are new prophets in the modern land, new people that are saying things that are just really generating in my heart. So I've already talked about caring for all and what works for the children. That's got to be the first thing. What is going to work for the children? You know, not about the greed of a billionaire putting more money in his bank account, but what works for the children. Then I'd like to talk about seeds, agriculture, localization, I mentioned already. The importance of water, clean water available to all communities. We have the sufficiency in this world for that. And it is taken away by greedy corporations. And we have to be very clear that there is enough for everybody. And it's accessible. I also would thoroughly recommend, apart from Steiner's incredible work, how many years ago? 100 years ago? With agriculture and biodynamic farming and all his beliefs on education as well. I would very much recommend, if you don't already know about Vandana Shiva, I'm sure most of you do, I think you're in the same world. Vandana Shiva is an extraordinary, wonderful activist, academic, and powerful woman. She's written many books. Ecofeminism was one of the first that I read and really inspired me. She runs university in India and courses on seeds of hope. She teaches thousands of farmers over there about staying with heritage seeds, and she has gone up in arms as a one woman, well, of course, absolutely supported by many, many of us, against Monsanto and how they've tried to take ownership of seeds. And so the importance we have in our small communities of working with heritage seeds and saving them and then swapping them with others so we can build up our seed banks of organic seeds. So important that they don't get destroyed, the big companies would like to do. So if you don't know about Vandana Shiva, she's online a lot, and she speaks a lot. She did an incredible talk last week on Humanity Rising, which I know is available, with another one of my heroes, Charles Eisenstein, who I'm sure you may have had, you certainly had the opportunity to hear him speak over this current period. And he is a very, very inspiring man. Everything that comes out of his mouth, I'm just like, yes, 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 totally right. And one of the things that he's written about is the sacred economy. And I'd like to move on to economy and the circular economy. What does the circular economy look like? The circular economy, as a phrase, is almost being taken up by green business and corporations who want to tick another box. Oh, I'm into circular economy, they say. Well, what is circular economy? In some ways, what it's supposed to mean now is that it's every decision is made on making, producing, selling, gives back not only to the human race, but also to the environment. So it's like non-wastage. Or if you're, I had to listen to a talk from a fantastic cheesemaker in the area of Somerset where I live, who has everything based on renewable energy. So, and there's no wastage in his business. Or my friend Penny Nagel, who with her husband runs a small farm, and again, there's no wastage. They're cheesemakers, and everything goes back into the farm, into the land with the animals. It's a much more holistic way of working, but it's not just relevant for farmers, it's everybody. And again, I'm not sure how many of you be aware of donut economy, which is based on the book, came out about 4 years ago by the Englishwoman Kate Raworth, which is has been taken up now by a number of areas in the world. Not long ago, maybe about 3 months ago, Amsterdam became the first donut economy city, and that is where every decision that's made about business and the economy in that city has to take into consideration giving back in some way from an ecology perspective, as well as to the people that live there. So there is, again, no wastage. It's all circular. But for me, the circular economy goes that step further. Circular economy is about how we can give to each other. It's about the care economy. It's about the sacred economy that Charles writes about and talks about. It's giving without expectation, and it just keeps the thing going around. It's about volunteerism. It's about, to use the one small town theory, just trying to, Michael Tellinger. His whole thing is that if everybody in a small town of 5,000 or 6,000 gives 3 hours volunteerism a month, we can create our own economy. I do live in a small town of 5,000 or 6,000, and I'm very delighted to say that under a very visionary woman mayor and council, we are building in our little town much more of a sustainable future where we can all work together, rewilding, planting, doing community projects. We connect and we communicate all the time, and everybody knows what's going on. Everybody who wants to know is able to know what's going on. There's no sort of secrets behind a town hall door. And I'm very delighted that I've ended up living in somewhere like this. I'm not sure if there's any quotes that I can't see, but I'm going to live with that. So on economy, do look up Charles Eisenstein, do look up Kate Raworth. Also, there's an organisation, Alternatives UK, which is run by some very smart friends of mine, Indra Adnam and Pat Kane, and they are available easily to find on the internet, Alternatives UK, and they are constantly hosting speakers with some very, very important points of view, as well as having conversations and community there that gather generally. Plus, they also write weekly feedbacks on what's going on, particularly, obviously, it's Alternatives UK, so it's about the UK, and I couldn't recommend that more also to have a look at. So the other thing that I think is very relevant for circular economy is community money, bartering with each other, whether it be services or products, or I'll give you 6 eggs if you give me a new tyre for my car. Well, that's a bit unequal. Maybe I'll give you a lot more than that for the new tyre for my car. But that's what's happened in a huge amount of communities. It's what's happened for thousands of years, actually, of course. But it's also what's happened in places where their economy has broken down, or whether there's been a war or a natural disaster. In Greece, when their economy broke down a few years ago, that was all went back to barter. In war zones that I've come across, it's all gone back to barter. It's always led by the women, and it's very, very community-based. So part of what I do with my Seed platform is look all the time about how we can develop barter, and we're going to be facilitating opportunities for the women who are part of my Seed platform to barter with each other. And it's already happening very organically. They've all got different skills, different knowledges. I was on a call yesterday with 7 of them. I said, what would you like? What do you need from this call? And one of them would put out there, I'd need more energy. And then others who were in healers of different kinds, they'd offer different ways that she could get more energy, and then vice versa. And then the healers wanted to know how to get the true value for what they're offering. We are able to exchange in a way that perhaps we haven't done enough of. We also do need to earn a living if we want food on the table, until we get to the point where we're growing it all ourselves. But, there's an awful lot, and I think it's very, very natural, again, for women in community to exchange and barter in that way. There's been community currency used, particularly got quite out there about, 10, 15 years ago, when we had the Brighton pound, the Brixton pound, the Bristol pound, do you remember? And it's all based on the Let's system, which came out of Canada, which is a community money system. And you can look that up as well, Let's, L-E-T-S, Let's Exchange. And so I don't know what happened to it, really. At one point, I wrote about it. It's all about, in the Seed Handbook, it's a lot about alternative money systems, but I don't know whether the government squashed it because they lost out on tax on it. I don't know, but it is time for community money as well. And then on a slightly more global basis, according to my friends who are in that world, and I know it's true, it is also about cryptocurrency. I hate that phrase, but particularly about blockchain technology. Blockchain technology, which I have put a lot of time into understanding over the last few years. I don't think I've got there yet. It is complicated, but basically it's a way of exchanging, of doing transactions online, which are totally transparent, which stay on the internet forever. That it is blockchain technology is used for cryptocurrency. It does use a lot of electricity because blockchain technology does this mining thing where it has to go deep. I don't really get it, but it has to use a lot of electricity to operate with their mining systems, so-called. But equally, there are people that are looking at how they can use solar energy for that aspect of blockchain. I know that it's being used already for a number of charities and situations globally, and that the not-for-profit world is really looking at blockchain as the answer for transactional exchanges throughout the world as we go forward into the future, where the central banks will probably not have the same role to play, much as they would like to. We are going to see a huge change in the banking system, and we need to be ready for it, I reckon. And that's a good thing altogether. And I'm going to see if there's any more. I know there's more people writing here, but I can't see them, unfortunately, because I will come off where I am. But anyway, here we go. All right. So that's my feeling on economy. Now, I've mentioned energy and Tesla. We're coming to the end of fossil fuel. There were some figures released the other day. I can't remember exactly. Was it 25% of all cars that have been bought in the UK in the last 12 months were electric? I'm not sure if I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's changing, and it's changing rapidly. And we're going to see definitely an end of fossil fuel use for cars. Again, you've got the whole situation. Is electricity going to be more sustainable? I don't know. And if it's charged sustainable, if it's charged through renewable means, yes, it is. So we're going to see a huge shift in the way we travel and what's going to happen with energy as well. And that's going to be very, very interesting. But that knowledge and that understanding of how to do it has been with us for years. I mean, Tesla was 1920. We've had lots of people since then who have been studying and writing about different kinds of energy that can be used for our transport, from water, from biodiesel being used by businesses using up their rubbish. There's lots of different ways, and it has been all kept down because of the petrol industry, in the same way that natural health is kept down by the pharmaceutical industry, and big businesses have made decisions. That's why Tesla's free energy philosophy, and he discovered all different ways of using power when he was when he was a young man, 1920 and before, which were destroyed by the big businesses, by General Electric in America. And anyway, it's a whole other. Read about Nikolai Tesla and watch the film about his life. The most amazing man, died on his own in a room somewhere, I think in Chicago or somewhere. He was a genius. But he put the work out there, and he was before his time, and wasn't before his time. The human race managed to ignore him, and now it's time to really acknowledge and honour all these amazing people that have come up with this information and knowledge, which we've not listened to, and we are ready to listen to it now. I also talked a little bit about my spirituality, the return to the sacred feminine, which again is not exclusively for women, it's for all of us to go to a softer, loving society. And indigenous wisdom, I've already mentioned quite a lot, is very much where I go and look for it. And whatever your spiritual beliefs are, it can just literally be going out and going into the woods and just be there in nature and just feel and breathe what Mother Nature is giving us. That can be your spiritual path, whatever it may be. Light your candle, just stay still, feel it in your solar plexus. It's there for all of us. I also have mentioned briefly education. I believe that we have to change the education systems drastically. I wish I'd known more when my children were young. I wish I'd known more then about Steiner and forest schools and the ways for children's imagination and creativity to be I think my brain's going, I'm doing too much talking, to be held, to be nurtured, and to be encouraged. I remember when I was at school, I didn't do great at school, I left at 16. When I was at school, I was constantly looking at, one of those kids that would just sit there looking out the window dreaming. And so I was always being told off for daydreaming. I think that we should be encouraging children and adults to daydream, don't you? We should all be daydreaming. And I wish as I say, that I'd known more about all this when I was the mother of young children. Now, I can only just tell others, encourage your children to dream. They are the future. They have to do the dreaming the same way we do. So education for me is about cross-generational, how we can work with the children, whether we're grandmothers or not grandmothers. My children don't live near me. I wish I saw them more often, or at all. But it is about sharing the wisdom of the elders with the youth as well, and with teenagers. The teenagers of today just blow me away. They're so bright. They're not going out, doing stupid things mostly. They are looking at the future. They are doing their yoga. They are talking to each other. They're making their music. They are understanding the world in a way that I didn't even think of when I was a teenager. For me, it was all mods and rockers and music and fashion. I mean, teenagers today just blow my mind. It's not just Greta Thunberg, who is amazing. It's all of them. And, my generation really, the baby boomers, if you like, or the wisdom keepers, as I like to think, are really there to hold out our hands to them and say, listen to our mistakes, not listen to all the things we got right. Listen to the things we got wrong, as well as few of the things we got right. And listen to our experiences and have it as our gift to you. And we then hold up our arms and we hold out our hands and we bring the teenagers over the bridge of life to the future that they will be the leaders of. No question about that. On my list here, I've got health. Charles Eisenstein, in the talk he did on last week that I saw on Humanity Rising, talked about the fact that there is no conversation with all this stuff about COVID. There is no conversation about natural health, about the ways we can build up our immunity system. that we raise about acupuncture, herbs, homeopathy, supplements, natural diet, a good diet, organic foods. There's no conversation about what we can do for ourselves and a feeling of joy. There's only suppression, suppression, suppression. And it's so important. Actually, I was very interested to see. I did quickly read one of the papers today. And apparently, vitamin D3 is going to be available on the National Health to senior people. Of course, the quality probably won't be right, and they won't get it right. But I guess that's something, isn't it? They're understanding that lack of sunshine can affect older people, which I am one. So, but I'm not sure I'd rely on the quality of what the National Health would give me for my vitamins. But none of that is taken into consideration. It's all like, stay at home, put on a mask. And I'm not going to go on to the mask thing because it's a very diverse subject. But as somebody who has asthma, it would just be crazy for me to be walking around with a mask. It would just be far worse. And I just think that we have to be responsible in our own ways for what we want to do, and not go to war with each other, and not for neighbours, not to inform on neighbours, and for us all just to be sensible as we can be. And I think this lack of treating, certainly in the UK, but I think it's pretty much everywhere, treating adults, or treating any of the society as sensible people, and treating us and talking down to us and patronising us and giving us rules and laws that make no sense at all. It's just, it makes me cry in the wrong way. It's so bad. I mean, I was out and about yesterday and it didn't seem like some kind of lockdown. What it did seem was a lockdown for small independent businesses like mine. I have a shop, beautiful shop, lifestyle shop, selling holistic products, eco products. We've had to close the door. And so it's like, let's destroy the independents, let's destroy the independent shops, let's destroy the hospitality industry, let's destroy hairdressers, let's destroy the travel industry. And then once we've done that, what should we destroy next? I mean, it's just like, there's no logic in, people were out and about. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to go on about that. It just makes me cry a bit. So on health, I have friends in the natural health business who use Tesla-inspired machines, violet ray machines or analytical machines, all inspired and some, in fact, made along the lines of Tesla, which do incredible things for health and were banned from hospitals. They were all in the hospitals, violet ray machines particularly in the 20s, and then they were banned for some mad reason, and there are very few available. Clive DeCarle has some. You can look him up and look about violet ray machines. And my friend Richard Cumbers has got these Tesla-inspired black boxes that do analytical symptoms and can feed back. There's some amazing things out there, incredible. Russian machines, small machines, which can get rid of all sorts of things. But of course, we're not allowed to make claims. Those people who do make claims are taken off the internet. But the things are out there. There are extraordinary things. And let's not forget flower essences. Let's not forget herbs. Let's return to the learning and the teaching of how herbs can heal us, and how we can have a very, very natural way of looking after our health. It's so, so important going forward. And I got it, tick, tick, tick. Got to look after our gifts from Mother Earth, the gifts for our health that we get from Mother Earth all the time. I talked about housing a little bit, and I also did talk about Buckminster Fuller. And I would like to just, again, reiterate that there are amazing ways of sustainable housing out there. Hopefully, more developers will start being influenced by the idea of using renewable energy and green building techniques. Those of us who are buying houses should insist on it. More and more people are now buying bits of land to grow their own sustainable housing. We need more and more and more. That's where we have to go. And we have to learn from each other. On my list of important things of life, I've got culture, art, creativity, dance, music. Don't ever lose your dance. And that's what we'll be doing this weekend, or we have been doing this weekend. I mentioned it earlier. I can't emphasize enough the importance of bringing joy, always bringing joy into our lives, and co-creating the dream. So I'm going to take this moment, and I want you, if any of you have got anything you want to say that I can, questions or any points or something you'd like to recommend, please put it in the comments. Now, I wrote this book called Grow in 2004 actually, and I wrote several things which I forget myself sometimes that I wrote these things because I move on to the next, and then because I'm a futurist and I live in the future and occasionally the present and forget about the past. But I read today something I've forgotten that I'd written 2004, 16 years ago. If you don't mind, I'm going to do a little bit of reading from my book. I still have these books. If anybody wants Grow or Seed, we have some, and I will be redoing them, but we have them still. And you can get them from my store, which is maybe Tamsin, you could put up seed-store.org. You can get my books. You can get hold of me at lynnfranks.com or the Seed Network. My membership platform is theseedhub.club. I'm out there. You can find me very easily. I'm on Facebook. I'm on every bit of social media you can find. I never thought at this point in my life I would be on technology the way I am, but I am. So from local to global was this piece. It was a whole chapter on how I saw the future. So I'm just going to read it fairly quickly. This was 15 years ago. Some years ago, an American friend complained to me that finding a good hamburger in England, much less Europe, was practically impossible. Our European version of that American speciality was too dry or too tasteless. I went, this American has got no complaints now, as she can get her beloved American-style hamburger in any one of the thousands of McDonald's that have sprung up like mushrooms in every major city all over the place. The same can be said for any American jeans she might want, shoes, music, almost any other consumer goods. We live in a global society, and we are bringing in products from everywhere. Like it or not, the world is getting smaller. We're being bound closer than ever before, both economically and culturally. Civilizations that have evolved for thousands of years are now being swept up in a homogeneous global culture. The message of this culture is satellite TV. Well, that's what it was 15 years ago. Interesting. Now it's social media, of course. And the values that it spreads are those of cash and consumption. The word globalization is bandied about quite a bit these days. Its basic premise is to create an integrated, no-border economic and trading system where every country is on equal footing to compete in the open market on goods, labour and service. The theory is, they said, that over time poorer countries, I'm trying to rush it, that's why, will become richer because of the influx of capital. This creates a higher standard of living. It all sounds fine in theory, but in practice it's another matter. The mechanism of globalization today sees the more advanced governments and large multinational corporations taking advantage of the poorer people and their communities. Loans which come from global institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank to supposedly right the economies of poor countries are instead sending them deeper into debt, in dictating the terms for poorer nations to receive economic aids or loans. The West has essentially stacked the deck in its favour. The monetary gap between West and developing countries has risen, not fallen, while poverty in these countries has increased, not diminished. There's a lot more on that, and it's spot on. I was amazed. I just read this morning. I thought, my goodness. Talked about genetic engineering, about the Indian farmers encouraged to plant genetic engineered seeds rather than the normal ones, and how it destroyed them and it destroyed their economy, and so many of them committed suicide. I'm sure I've got pictures of Vandana Shiva in here as well. Globalization has been equally devastating the environment. By throwing open access to the natural resources of developing nations, companies have come to exploit natural resources for profit. More forests are being cut down, more land is being torn apart and mined for minerals and precious stones, more air is being polluted, more water is being rendered undrinkable, and more species of plants and animals are disappearing. While there has been some minimal profit made by countries, mostly going to their corrupt governments and leaders, rather than to the citizens, resources are being plundered and destroyed while the people in this country continue to suffer. I did talk about Vandana Shiva. I hadn't read this bit. I haven't read it for years. Celebrated eco-feminist Vandana Shiva, who has written a dozen influential books on global ecology. Well, it was a dozen 15 years ago. It's probably double that now. Believes that a new feminine perspective holds solutions to the world's age problems. I attended a conference in Spain where she stated the paradigms that are being accepted combine military power with power in the economic domain through globalization and the deployment of irresponsible technological power in an unrealistic manner, which become reality only through the use of force. Reality is a feminist and ecological vision that is so real it doesn't need power to find its place. Thank you, Vandana. So I've got 10 minutes left. Please write to me if you want to say anything here now. Really here now. I can't see anything coming up now, so I don't know if that's my Facebook or whether I'm... Oh, wait a minute, it's because I hadn't scrolled through, that's why. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Cheryl. Electric cars are not the best option. I never said they were. And daydreaming, yep, lots of good things here. Lots of good things. So I'm going to read, which herbs do I use? I use lots of herbs. I'm not sure. I'm happy to talk to you about that separately, Brooke. I'm totally into that. And Rachel Stevens says, when teenagers meet, they hug each other. We never connected like that when we were teenagers. And that's true. Oh, Louise, thank you, darling. Thank you. Love it too. So I'm going to read briefly in the few minutes I've got left. And again, if anybody would like to add or ask questions or put their perspective, do. So this is the, some of you I know have heard me say this a few times before, read it. And I'm going to read it again because it's so important. So this is how I'm going to kind of come to the end of this talk. It's nearly gone for an hour. Wow, it's amazing. Shaping the future. As women, we are, and I must say Grow was written as the modern woman's handbook. So any guys here, I think it's all women actually. Surprise, surprise. But any guys, love you, love you. Shaping the future. As women, we are traditionally the caretakers of our culture. Our responsibility is to understand and somehow make sure that the changes that are happening in our world preserve the basic humanity in us all. By connecting with the principles of the sacred feminine, such as those found in ancient matriarchal civilizations, a more nurturing society can evolve, one that abhors violence, advocates such values as justice, compassion and love, and raises its children to reach their full potential as human beings. When people talk with such idealism, they are often accused of being naive. How can we change a world that's solidly entrenched in the way of competition, domination, and violence? My answer is that without creating the vision, nothing can be achieved. And without having that intention for that change in our hearts, we will find ourselves living in a world that perpetuates everything that goes against our feminine sensibilities. Brahma Kumari leader Sister Janti, who I'm also a huge fan of, addressed this point at a conference on conflict resolution in Sweden in 2001. She said it would only take a relatively small group of committed individuals to initiate the transformation of human consciousness to a more positive, caring society. The beliefs of the minority reaching the points of critical mass will shift the majority and create a culture of peace. So we really can do it together. I'll carry on if you don't mind in the few minutes I have left. If we're talking about getting rid of the old, outdated patriarchal ways of running the world, it's essential to present a pragmatic vision of what we want to replace it with. We need an overall blueprint of what a new world based on principles of the sacred feminine would look like and how it would work. The primary foundation for such a world is cooperation. First and foremost, it's cooperation between male and female. As women, we know that the best and most efficient way to get things done is to work together, and that means living and working with men in harmonious coexistence, valuing the perspectives and strengths of both sexes and creating a higher quality of life for all. It must also be a world of cooperation between business and community, human beings and the planet, national governments and non-governmental organisations, whatever those national governments have to look like, which is not how they look now. Young and old, spirituality and science, and our inner and outer selves. The opportunities to create this world does exist now. This is what I said in 2004, and my goodness, it really exists. It really does exist now. It is possible to create a society where we can bring people together and heal our families, our community, and our world. To do so would take a new breed of leaders, ones who aren't tied to the old ways of doing things. Rather than money or power, these leaders must have spiritual values to guide them. And since spiritual values are at our core, it is vitally important for women to step up and take the lead in this transformation of society, which is what I said right at the beginning. A cooperative society is an organic, evolutionary step away from the world we presently live in. When the power of national governments diminish, which is what we're seeing, that power will naturally transfer into specific small and large networks which transcend national boundaries and link with one another. Consequently, a new economic order could be created that truly rewards efforts, including the caring of others. Distribution of land and natural resources would be fairly shared amongst the people who live on it, and the need to conquer and repress others in the name of power would not be a consideration. One more paragraph. Cooperative ways of working together, whether in agriculture or small enterprise networks that encourage individual creativity instead of exploiting workers, would develop gradually as this new feminine paradigm took hold. And in a cooperative society based on a feminine perspective, training in technology skills would be open for all, and education in understanding and respecting the differences between cultures and beliefs of others would become an intrinsic element of society. Traditional and holistic medicines would integrate, creating a new science that treats and creates disease based in part on sensible nutrition, exercise and meditation. Our senior citizens would be revered and respected, keeping our history, both personal and societal, alive. Men and women would create new kinds of relationships based on mutual respect and love rather than selfish needs and society's expectations. We would have freedom of choice in how we wish to live in every aspect of life. Yes, it is a somewhat utopian vision, but we must believe that it is possible to achieve. Our personal responsibility in making all this come about is to first bring ourselves into the same sort of harmonious balance we wish to see in the world. So thank you so much. So Brooke Galloway says here, we need a group based on these philosophies. Well, we have one at Seed, but I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to work with me on how we make this change. I'm totally available. You can find me, as I said, on Facebook. I have a women's, I'm getting a bit. I have a women's Facebook group, Seed Women with Lynn Franks. So please come and join me there. I can see lots of good friends on this call this morning. So love to you all and love to new friends. I can see I'm going to have to go. So I just send you love, peace, compassion, wisdom, and a very, very joyful day. Namaste, and enjoy the rest of the festival. God bless.